Hey, what's up everyone? Tedrick85 here, and today I'm going to be talking about Namco Museum Volume 3 for the PlayStation. All this game is a compilation of classic Namco arcade games that are presented in the form of museum exhibits. I'm going to do something different with this review. Instead of telling you about the games, which I'm sure most of you have played once you see what they are, I'm going to give you a tour of the museum itself, which I think is really neat. The tour is pretty long, so I'm going to be splitting this review into two parts. First off, I want to talk about the intro in this game, which the graphics in here look downright awesome. As you can see here, this alludes to a game called Tower of Druaga, and there's our hero Gilgamesh, who opens up a chest. And look, there's Pac-Man, the other star of this game. Which I have to say, the Pac-Man, to me, this game puts a lot of its focus on the Tower of Druaga, as you'll see later on in my review. But the star of this game, for me, is definitely not Pac-Man, but Miss Pac-Man. There's Pole Position 2, one of the first true racing games ever made. Pretty good game. And then there's Dig Dug, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with. Another very fun and addictive game. The sequel's pretty good too. And here's this game, which I thought when I first bought this was Galaga, but it's actually Galaxian, which is pretty much the same thing. There's not really a whole lot of difference between the two games. And here's an interesting game, Fozon. So all you need to do is just link molecules in that together, which is pretty fun, which I'm sure some of you probably played. And last but not least, Miss Pac-Man. As you can see here, she and her hubby, Mr. Pac-Man, are going to the museum, which is going to be the focus of this review. One thing about the PlayStation is it takes a while to load. And there's the title screen, which you saw in the intro of my review. And you have options to start out with on this title screen. You can either go through the museum itself, play the mini games, or change the audio on it from either stereo or mono. But we're going to take a tour of the museum, which has pretty much in it. It's now loading screen again with Gilgamesh from Tower of Druaga in it. There's a receptionist or whatever you want, a curator. It's curator, I'm sorry. We will not be playing with a memory card today, but if you do, you would register and put your name in there. I like how I have this as no touching the exhibits. I think that's a pretty cool touch. Oh, no smoking too, that's important. Why you would want to smoke in the Namco Museum is beyond me, or any museum. These are your records. If you're playing with a memory card, you can go through each game and see what the high scores are and see what you need to do in order to achieve a new one. As you can see, not really anything here. Like I said before, I'm not playing with a memory card, so this first part of my review isn't going to be really talking about the games so much as like all the other stuff that's in the museum. In the first place, I'm going to take you right off the bat is the library, which holds some pretty interesting stuff in it. As you see here, it's a pretty nice library. Nice big windows. Talk to the librarian right here. This is probably my favorite part of the library right here. You get to see the entire history of the Namco games from 1978 to 1996. Galaxian is the oldest game featured on this CD. Of course, Pac-Man 1980. There's Dig Dug. Some of these games, I have to be honest, I've never heard of, or I've never played. It's a shame Galaga wasn't on here because that's one of my favorite Namco games. Some of these games I didn't even realize were made by Namco. The music here can kind of get to you after a while, but you can always mute it if you want. Tekken, I'm sure all of you are familiar with, or most of you. Oh, there was a game featured on here. I don't know if you caught it. It was the Outfoxies. Film and Stuff had a really good review on it, and it is an awesome game. If you get a chance to play it, please do so, because it's probably one of the best games Namco has ever made. Though some people have never even heard of it. I know I didn't until I watched that review. Now we're going to go down to the lower level of the library. And here is an exhibit of all these magazines and that made specifically about the different Namco games. As you can see here, you're going to be flipping through all these magazine covers and that, and see what was featured on a certain month. Isn't that awesome? And it was kind of like the early version of Nintendo Power, because it did give a lot of information about the video games. And over here you get to see illustrations of the different games, which here is Tower of Juraga, like I said during the intro. This game put a lot of its focus on this particular game. Which I have to admit right now, I'm not a big fan of Tower of Juraga. It's an okay game. I think it's one of the better games I've played. It certainly doesn't suck by any means, but as you can see here, like all the enemies, all the items, all the drawings of the characters and that. But yeah, I think they should have put more emphasis on Miss Pac-Man because more people are familiar with it, and I like her more, personally. You could see more early designs of the characters. Yeah, our hero Gilgamesh in this game, which he shortens his name as Gil, is based off the ancient Sumerian hero. If you're familiar with the Epic of Gilgamesh, that's a pretty good story. I don't know how many of you know this, but there's actually a cartoon based on the Tower of Juraga. I have yet to see it, but all the trailers and stuff I've seen on the internet about it, I think I'm gonna watch it one of these days because it looks pretty good. Oh, and here's an interesting too. Here's some old photos back when these games were being made, and all the the memorabilia and all the equipment and that was used to make them. Right there, they only showed the game Galaxian, but all the other games were pretty much made in the same way. And that's pretty much it for the library, which I think is a pretty cool place. Now we're gonna be going off to the movie theater, and I'll explain this in just a second. But look at this, doesn't it look like you're actually going in a theater? How cool is that? Looked as Mappy. Another game which I don't know why they didn't feature, but okay. And there's some more people. There's some Pac-Man ghosts. Pac-Man and Miss Pac-Man up front. The enemies from Dig Dug. You see the big screen up front. Now, in this theater, you can actually play music and sound bites for each of the games on here. But for this review, I'm just gonna play Miss Pac-Man because it's my favorite game out of all of them. So I'm just gonna give you like a taste of what they do. Well, you can pick pretty much any game from here, but like I said, I'm picking Miss Pac-Man. So you can see like all the I forgot to mention all the visual stuff in it. Like you can see all the girls, all the fruit, Miss Pac-Man and Pac-Man. And of course you get to hear some of this music, which I'm sure most of you have already heard already. That's some of the most iconic music in video game history, which is another reason why I want to play it. I love nostalgia. Now this music does play it all the way through, so unless you push next to that or push stop and that, it's just gonna play the entire song if you don't want. And if you don't want to hear all of it, you can push stop and. Those are all the sounds. Nothing real special, but again, it brings back memories if you ever played this either on the Atari or the NES or whatever system you played Pac-Man on. So you see one last look at the movie theater. There's even an exit door there, which is pretty cool. And that's it for the movie theater. And that's pretty much going to be it for this first half of my review. And the second half, I'm going to be focusing on the exhibits themselves, which feature the games that you'll be playing, the mini games. There are a total of 6 altogether, so this is TedJoke85, and hopefully you stick around for the next part.